accomplishments, right? Regional top 64 in 2020. And Mike, again, as we've said before, a very experienced player. Has been playing the game for close to, if not a decade so far at this point. So has a lot of experience with this. And it's going to be really interesting, especially as we dive in and see how these decks are played. Davide playing a little bit of a interesting build, has some cool tech options in this list. And again, Mike playing a little bit of a newer deck, obviously releasing with the Battle Styles expansion, and also has some very cool tech cards in this. So I think we're ready to go ahead and hop into this match here. Our first match that we're going to be commentating for the winners bracket, winners quarterfinals here. And it looks like we're going to start things off with a coin flip. And it looks like Mike is going to choose whether or not to go first or second.
Yeah, and Mike choosing to go ahead and go first. Definitely what you want to do as this Urshifu deck, go ahead and get a Pokemon V down on the bench. Try to get an energy attachment to it as well, so you can start to threaten that G-Max Rapid Flow on turn 2 super quickly. And we see Davide actually starting one of his tech Pokemon here, that Cryogonal. Not something that's going to be super good, I feel like, in this matchup. Really kind of here, I feel like as a tech for certain decks, like, you know, maybe some control decks, also can be very good against Blacephalon decks, the Welder decks potentially. And Mike has a very weak turn here, just starts that Giratina and attaches an energy to it, and that's it.
Yeah, both players here starting their tech Pokemon that are maybe not so good in this matchup, right? Giratina being there for that ability to go ahead and get rid of special energies, and we see action on Davide. He's actually taking a little bit of a more aggressive approach, checking through the deck with Cherish Balls, actually going to grab the Denate GX. I think we're going to go ahead and see this hand get pitched away. Could have maybe grabbed something like that Arceus-style Gunpolki and attached. Again, when your opponent's not doing much, you can take the turn to maybe play a little bit safer, but wouldn't be able to draw so much off that Darkest set. And wow, this is a great hand. Has the air balloon to attach. You can even see double Quick Ball get played, or just one at this point. I don't even think there's a reason to play the other one. You have the energy in the discard pile, right, to go ahead and grab. We could even see Davide push for this turn 1 Alter Creation. There's the Zacian V, Metal Saucer throwing the energy on. We're actually going to see him go for the Donk here. I like this route of play a little bit more aggressive. Let's see if he gets there. No, but had he not went for that more aggressive play on Zacian, we would have been able to see the turn 1 Alter Creation here. Has the energy switch, has the water energy in hand. So Davide maybe biting his lips a little bit, right? Would have had that turn 1 Alter Creation. I think the game may have even been sealed there with how ahead Davide would have been in that position.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate for Davide. Saw an opportunity, really decided to just go for it. Wanted to try to get this turn 1 KO, and you know, maybe getting punished a little bit here. Could have played it a little safer and just tried to go for that Altered Creation. We see it would have worked out for him, but unfortunately, just going to have to end the turn with an Intrepid Sword. Also chose to discard the energy switch there, which would have been your way to get off the Altered Creation on this coming turn. Davide is playing a little bit more techie of a list, so only playing 3 copies of Energy Switch, so it could be actually difficult to see a you know, a turn 2 altered. Maybe Davide's just going to try to go in a little more aggressively, maybe a turn 2 Brave Blade.
Yeah, again, a very interesting choice there. Looks like Mike actually top decking the Quick Ball. I see no reason that would not have gotten played the following turn, especially when it's so scary against this turbo deck to leave a Pokemon in play. He's going to go ahead and discard Professor's Research from hand. So Mike, again, not being able to play supporters on turn 1 is at least going to be able to play some this turn, as I most likely see that with discarding the Research. Going to take some time to look through the deck, and it looks like we are going to see... Yeah, just taking a look through the deck to see what there is. This Giratina does have the ability to pivot out into something like a Jirachi. So that energy attachment is nice. Again, you really don't want to lose your energy so quickly. And yeah, as you said, very interesting discard on Davide's side to get rid of that energy switch, right? Had multiple draw supporters in hand, that Marnie and that Professor's Research. Choose to not discard that. So I wonder what Davide's thought process is in this game. Is going to go ahead and grab that Urshifu as well as that Fighting Energy, and Marnie going to be the supporter of choice for Mike. Is going to take that reasonably sizable hand size from Davide and put it down to half now, only getting 4 cards off that Marnie, as Mike will draw a fresh new 5, and look, there's the other energy switch chip, so never punished, am I right?
Yeah, it could work out here for Davide. Also gets the Metal Energy, so, you know, if you top deck something like maybe a Quick Ball for the Eldegoss, or even one of your remaining boss's orders, you could just go for that knockout right away on Urshifu. We see the Energy Spinner is the draw there, so that'll actually work out very nicely. Go ahead and get the attachment onto the Arceus Dialga Palkia. We see the Energy Switch brings this Metal Energy over, and a pretty solid turn here. Also gets the Chaotic Swell in play, can limit Mike's options to get that Martial Arts Dojo into play, which is it could be helpful with some math at some point in this game. And also the Tool Scrapper here drawn for David, pretty interesting little tech card. We don't see that often in ADP anymore. Able to actually pay off pretty nicely here.
Yeah, it's going to get rid of the one of two tool cards in Mike's deck. Is running something a little bit more obscure we haven't seen so much. Again, Urshifu being a pretty new deck, but a card that we haven't seen a lot of lists, that Karate Belt, one of those revenge mechanic cards that says if you have more prize cards left in your opponent, you can attack for 1 fighting energy less, which is great on these fighting type Pokemon. Can even allow you to G-Max Rapid Flow with only 2 energy, being an attack that allows you, or forces you rather, to discard energy cards. And we see that actually come down right away. So Mike definitely happy that didn't get played down the following turn, or the previous turn rather, as that would have just been discarded with the Tool Scrappers. We see the Zigzagoon, Galarian Zigzagoon, go ahead and ping the active, place 10 damage on it, followed up by yet another Marty. So Mike's got to be looking to apply some pressure onto this Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia.
Yeah, this is actually could be a very solid position for Mike. What can happen here is if you get the 150 damage Gale Thrust off with your Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, thanks to that 10 damage from Headbutt Tantrum, all you need on the next turn is to just discard all your energies with G-Max Rapid Flow, and that'll knock out this Arceus Dialga Palkia that has 120 HP remaining at that point. So the math actually works out very, very nicely, but it's only going to work if Mike is able to find the Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, and we haven't seen it played yet. Maybe he missed.
Yeah, had to get rid of a Rapid Strike energy and a switch off of that Dedenne. So, yeah, we'll see what ends up getting played. It looks like another Urshifu V is going to be in play and is retreating into the Urshifu. So there is no VMAX, but still going to hit for a sizable amount of damage, right? 150 damage, so is setting up that 2-hit knockout onto the active as a big top deck for David. Had pretty much nothing in the hand. But that Eldegoss, if there is a boss's orders in that discard pile, which I believe there were 2 that got discarded this first turn, this is going to put David in an excellent position. We'll be able to grab that with the Happy Match ability. That the Dedenne that just got played down last turn from Mike is going to be able to get picked off with this boss's orders, and this is just looking like ADP doing its daily routine chip, taking that turn 3 boss's orders, knockout, accelerating all the energy out of the deck, and David, I just feels like in such a dominant position at this point. Has the Zamazenta down as well, means that these Urshifu VMAXs will not be able to damage the Zamazenta V either.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Mike could be in an okay spot here. If you're able to find both of your VMAXs to protect these Urshifu Vs, there's actually no way for David to win the game on the following turn. The bench is full. I mean, you could maybe get lucky if something gets knocked out here with a Mawile GX potentially, but if Mike can find both of the VMAXs here and get the 3 prize turn by knocking out the active Arceus Dialga Palkia and then knocking out the benched Cryogonal, you could just close out the game on the following turn with a Gale Thrust on a Dedenne GX. So if Mike can find both Urshifu VMAX here in order to protect these Urshifu Vs so they can't be KO'd to a Brave Blade, I actually think Mike could be in a winning position.
Yeah, it's going to revolve around being able to find that combination of cards necessary, and we're seeing the scoop up net already, so this Urshifu will not be able to take a knockout with something like Gale Thrust. We'll have to either go ahead and utilize something like that Great Catcher to bring up a Dedenne GX, and a scoop up net as well to bring the Giratina back. Research, which was the grab off the Stellar Wish, going to get played, is going to find Mike a fresh new hand of 7 cards. So I have to imagine looking for something like that VMAX. That 10 damage from that Zigzagoon coming in very relevant on that Arceus Dialga and Palkia is going to set up perfect math for Mike to take a whopping 5 prize turn as long as we see something like the Pokemon Communications. There it is. So that will guarantee Mike the VMAX. And like you said, if Mike doesn't play down, which I'm sure he's going to try to avoid as much as possible, something like another Pokemon V or GX, something like the Dedenne or Crobat, it would also be great if Mike could, as you said, evolve that bench Urshifu VMAX, or V into a VMAX as well. But again, mainly getting this active VMAX is the big deal. Again, 5 prize turn most likely coming up from Mike. Could also take another route where this Dedenne stays stranded, but I think with that Great Catcher, Mike is going to utilize this G-Max Rapid Flow to the most of the ability as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. You know, your opponent actually plays I believe David plays the one copy of Reset Stamp. Yeah, does have that one copy in the list. So that actually could be something that comes up potentially where you get Reset Stamped to 1 if you take the 5 prize turn. So we'll just kind of see what Mike decides to do here. Does not look like we saw the evolution. And let's see which Pokemon are being knocked out here. Definitely that ADP, but what is the other one? Is it the Dene GX or is it that Cryogonal? Let's see what he decides. And it is going to go ahead and be that 5 prize turn. Oh, actually leaving the ADP.
Yeah. I like this play a lot. I just saw that line of play as you pointed out the Cryogonal on the field. This way you protect yourself against Reset Stamp, and additionally, the Archistyle Palkia is going to stay in play, which means if Mike has the cards like a VMAX Switch and Boss's Orders will be able to knock out that Archistyle Palkia on the bench, but this Zamazenta is going
to... gosh!
But there is the Boss's Orders off the top of the deck. What a top deck there for David. Will be able to Boss's Orders up that Zamazenta, retreat into the Zacian V with that 2 retreat cost, and Brave Blade is going to take a knockout. So Mike really needed to utilize finding another VMAX at that point. It's going to cost him the game here. David is going to go up 1-0 here in the first quarterfinals match that we're featuring for you guys in the winners bracket. It just feels like ADP's day today. ADP did exactly what they wanted that match. Drew pretty much perfectly, right? Found the Boss's Orders when possible. It's just, Chip, how do you stop this deck? How do you stop ADP when it draws like this? I'm at a loss for words, Chip.
Yeah, David with an insane draw off the top of the deck there. The Boss's Orders being the key card to win the game on that turn, bringing up the Urshifu V for the knockout. And I mean, you know, honestly, I kind of feel like if David had not gotten that, that Boss's Orders off the top, Mike wasn't in a terrible position. The Urshifu is going to be safe on the bench. Your opponent can't play 2 supporters, right? We saw the only other option really for David was to play the Professor's Research. So as long as Mike would have been able to find a switch and an energy, we could have seen the game closed out, knocking out that ADP on the bench. But David said, not today. Here's my Boss's Orders, and that's going to be, 3 more prizes. And we're going to move on to a game number 2 here.
Yeah, Chip, before we hop into game number 2, do you feel like Mike played that to the best of the ability? Is there something else he could do to maybe put the game into his court a little bit faster? It felt like he was on the back foot a little bit in that last match.
No, I think Mike played super well. I think he definitely whiffed a little bit for sure, whiffed the VMAX on one of those early turns, with that second VMAX there on the last turn of the game, which definitely would have kept him around for another turn. So, I mean, I think Mike was in a solid position. Maybe just got a little unlucky. I mean, David was down 2 Boss's Orders, had already used the Eldegoss, so he literally had to find one of those last 2 remaining Boss's Orders to close the game out. David was able to do it. Also an interesting card that didn't really come up in that game. We saw it come into play was that Zamazenta V, kind of an interesting tech card from David. I wonder if maybe there's a situation where David could utilize that a little more aggressively. Obviously, it worked out fine for him in this first game, but, if he hadn't top decked that Boss's Orders, could have been in a tough spot.
Zamazenta having such a great ability to wall out those VMAX Pokemon. We'll see if that comes into use and who will be able to take down this second game. So let's go ahead and jump into game number 2 between both of these players. Again, David will be on the bottom of your screen, Mike on the top, and we'll see what Mike opts to go ahead and choose. So Mike going to go ahead and opt to go first yet again. Feels less a confident way in this match, but David probably happy that David will be going second in this case, right? That the Dene start, but having a supporter to at least bail him out. So not out of the woods yet for David, but Mike going to start one of the best starters in the deck in that Jirachi. Great ability in Stellar Wish to find those trainer cards. Mike definitely going to hope for a little bit of a faster, more aggressive start here, and Quick Ball's going to be great at finding those Pokemon out of the deck.
Definitely a much better start here. If Mike has an energy as well, this will be ideal. You can go ahead and get the Urshifu the Urshifu V onto the bench, get the fighting energy or a rapid strike energy attached to it right away. That way you can threaten an attack very quickly next turn. And also Jirachi, excellent starter. Like you said, Stellar Wish, super strong. Going to give Mike most likely 2 turns of Stellar Wish at a minimum, right? Bearing any scoop up nets or something we could see come out. Since it's unlikely David is going to be taking a knockout. If David even attacks on turn 1, it's going to be an altered creation.
Yeah, so again, Mike, a very experienced player, right? Checking the prize cards, seeing what's in the deck. It's a big, crucial part of the Pokemon trading card game. wants to just take the time, make sure he knows how to execute the strategy to the best of the ability, right? And also sequencing things great, wants to grab Pokemon out of the deck before utilizing Stellar Wish, wants to maximize the amount of trainer cards in the deck. And another crucial thing here, finds that turn 1 energy. That's going to be really good for Mike. Needs to set up that math and put on the aggression and really try to string the Gale Thrust and utilize G-Max Rapid Flow to the best of the abilities. We see Jirachi is going to go for a Stellar Wish. Could be looking for something like access to that VMAX for the following turn. Another Quick Ball would be nice to get out another Pokemon, could start to apply some pressure, right, with multiple Vs. So there's a lot of options on Stellar Wish. It is actually going to grab nothing, so very unfortunate
Speaking
there
of options.
for Mike. Yeah, speaking of options here, as we see the top deck for David is just a Cryogonal, so I don't think there's any other option for David. I think we're going to be seeing a Marnie here, Chip.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you definitely... Oh, gonna bench it, actually? I'm not totally sure about this. Sure, it means that you don't, just get your only Dedenne knocked out, but putting this one prize Pokemon in play can actually be, kind of really impactful negatively to your strategy, where you want to force your opponent to knock out the Arceus Dialga Palkia and then two prize Pokemon. If you give them the option to knock out this Cryogonal, I mean, that was actually how Mike was going to potentially be able to win game number 1, right? Because that Cryogonal was in play. So I feel like it's a little risky, but I would have liked to have seen David hold on to that Cryogonal.
Yeah, Cryogonal is just one of those Pokemon right in there for very specific matchups. It just makes the game plan so much easier because Mike is usually going to have to go through one of these Arceus, Dialga, and Palkias, especially when it is that target right off the bat in the active, as we see Mike able to find an escape rope off that Stellar Wish. So we'll see if that's something like the Pokemon VMAX here in combination with this does have the Pokemon communication to throw that Urshifu V back into the deck. Is most likely going to go ahead and grab the VMAX. Is there it is. Look at that thing, 330 HP, an absolute monster here. That is such a great card out of the Battle Styles format, out of the expansion here, as Escape Rope is going to put David in the situation where he's got to make a decision, and this is going to be tough, right? You really don't want to let your Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia take damage, especially with this hand where you're really not threatening an Alter Creation the following turn. It just feels so bad to pretty much put yourself in a spot where this Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia may be knocked out before we even see it get off an Alter Creation. I think that would spell trouble here for David.
Definitely a tough spot, I think, for David. I mean, there's not really a great option of what to send up. If you send up Dedenne, you give your opponent 2 prizes super quickly. And that was just an excellent hit off of the Stellar Wish there for Mikey, able to play the escape rope and force David to make a tough call. And it looks like David has opted to go with this ADP. And this could be a really solid spot for Mikey. You have the option to get the 2-hit KO with the play we kind of lined up last game, right? With the the Gale Thrust and then into the G-Max Rapid Flow with Galarian Zigzagoon, or even just getting a 2-hit KO with the 2 Gale Thrusts. David's going to slow that option down a little bit there with a Tool Scrapper.
Yeah, Tool Scrapper, very good at getting rid of that Air Balloon. It was going to allow a very easy pivot option for Mike that following turn, putting that Urshifu VMAX at essentially 0 retreat cost, right? Free retreat. As Mawile will grab nothing, but look at that hand from Mike. That is not looking great. We'll still be able to utilize something like a G-Max Rapid Flow, can finish off that Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia with something like a Zigzagoon. So Mike is not out of it yet, has a few options. With that Chaotic Swell, though, would have liked to not see that come down, as the fighting or the martial arts dojo, would allow that to get boosted to the exact damage needed to take a knockout on this Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia. But grabbing Oranguru.
Yeah, looks like David going to go ahead and get this Oranguru and save the reset stamp here. Definitely something that can come into play big time, and actually finds maybe the best card to hit there, a Metal Energy. That way you can get it in the discard pile so you can activate your Metal Saucers potentially, but not really finding the pieces to pull off that one-turn Altered Creation play of, the Saucer plus the Energy Switch. So maybe just, going to go ahead and reset stamp from 4 to 6 here, limiting Mike's options a little bit. I mean, you saw Mike's hand. It wasn't the best. Mike
it was not very good at all.
Yeah, Mike had the option to attach the G-Max, the Rapid Strike Energy to the active, retreat to Jirachi, Stellar Wish, and then scoop up net, so you guarantee the knockout that way. So that's probably actually why David chose to go ahead and reset stamp it away, because there was the guaranteed knockout on the Arceus, Dialga, Palkia. So maybe actually ends up being kind of the smart decision here, even though Mike didn't have a supporter, had what he needed to get the KO.
Yeah, very interesting there. He's going to reset stamp Mike up to 6 cards, so Mike having some more options here potentially. We'll see again, Reset Stamp is one of those cards that sometimes it'll lie and sometimes it does exactly what it wants to do, right? To put your opponent at a disadvantage. But it seems here it found Mike the combination of cards to be able to take a knockout on this Arceus Dialga and Palkia. He's going to take 3 prize cards. David not able to pull off that Alter Creation. It just feels like David is on such a back foot at this point. Chip, what can he do in this position?
It's pretty tough for David to really win in this position. At this point, I would definitely be kind of just considering what my options are going to be for game number 2 at this point. If you can get the Zamazenta V into the active and start, attacking with that potentially, that can do something for you since it forces your opponent to find boss's orders to get around it. But David just going to go ahead and opt for the ADP. Still wants to try to get off the Altered Creation here. Let's see if he can find the pieces to do it. Saucer, but no Water Energy, Energy Switch, or Energy Spinner.
Yeah, he can only play one of those Metal Saucers. Can't even get an attack off this turn. Yeah, David and it just feels like such a poor position. Mike is just a boss's orders and a Rapid Strike energy away from taking this game, as Dene being weak to fighting G-Max Rapid Flow would be able to take an easy 3 prize cards. So Mike's got a pretty sizable hand, 8 cards. It's definitely not impossible. We do see the VMAX get benched, so that makes me think Mike maybe not having it right away. I'm sure he would have just slammed down the cards necessary to be able to take the game in this case. But again, Mike is such a solid position. Has 2 Urshifu VMAX on the board, each with an energy on it, threatening Gale Thrust at the ready. Mike, again, having a lot of options, right? Still has the supporter to play, is not attached yet, and Switch is going to be a great way to start things off with that Stellar Wish ability. Is actually just going to go ahead and guarantee the knockout onto this Cryogonal with Gale Thrust, and attaching another Fighting Energy just gives Mike more options in this case to utilize something like that G-Max Rapid Flow for the next turn.
Yeah, plenty of options here. You can just attach any fighting energy. That gives you the G-Max Rapid Flow. It also puts 2 energies on this active. So if all you have is the, boss's orders, potentially you can just hard retreat into the other Urshifu. So Mike's going to have plenty of options here. And speaking of options, David is really almost out of them, it feels like. It's a tough spot.
Yeah, we'll be able to thin this hand down to 2 cards and not Dark Asset up to 6. So this is going to have to be a big draw here, and yeah, this is just not looking like the combination cards. Sure, you can metal or energy switch the metal energy off of the Mawile onto that Arceus Dialga Palkia ADP. And it looks like we're actually going to see a research come out here, most likely, is going to throw that Metal Saucer on. There's another research, so that's just going to go ahead and be another card discarded off this. Needs to find water energy, does find it with the energy spinner, but is it too late, Chip, at this point? Does David just have too slow of a start, really, to get Alter Creation off? I think Mike maybe has this in the bag at this point, Chip. What do you think? Is Mike got it, or do we think David could make some sort of a comeback here?
Well, David's going to go down fighting, going to go down swinging at least. We've got the Metal Energy in hand, and yeah, Mike's just got it here. Boss's orders, going to bring up one of those fighting weak Pokemon on the bench. Hard retreat into the Rapid Strike Urshifu, and there you go. G-Max Rapid Flow, 300 damage, taking the KO on the Dene GX, and Mike is going to force a Game 3 here, trying to find his way to get a win in this matchup so that he can continue to move forward in the winner's bracket.
Yeah, and I think the big thing to note, right, David is not playing any of those tech Pokemon, right, really respecting this deck. We see some of these lists playing copies of Mew in their deck from Unbroken Bonds with that bench barrier ability to prevent those plays of G-Max Rapid Flow from being a possibility. We've even seen some lists in the past play stuff like the Mewtwo and Mew GX to be able to hit for weakness onto the Urshifu VMAX chip. Without any of those tech cards really in the deck, do you feel like this matchup is just when obviously each player draws correctly, right? Because we saw some unfortunate draws from both players in both of these games. Do you think that Rapid Strike Urshifu has the advantage, or does it just feel like the deck needs to hit too much to be able to keep up with this deck?
Yeah, I think I would give the slight edge to Rapid Strike Urshifu and give it to Mike in this game particularly, but David is going to be going first here, an advantage he hasn't really had yet, so he'll have a turn to, get off the Intrepid Sword, get the attachment to ADP, hopefully, and just really try to navigate the game through there, so we'll have to see how the opening hand looks for David. Sometimes with ADP, if you're not able to find the energy plus the Zacian, things can kind of be a little more tough. But if you can get both of those pieces, you really do put on so much pressure so quickly. And that's when you force your opponent to play things down like the Dene and Crobat to try to dig for the response. And those are just easy prizes for ADP in the mid to late game.
Yeah, I think the big word you said there was pressure. This is a matchup based around pressure. Who can put on that aggression as quickly as possible is going to be the big key here. I think we're ready, Chip, to get into this game 3. This is going to be an exciting one here. A clash between both these players. The winner will stay in the winner's bracket, while the loser will go down to fight it out in that loser's bracket, to try to make a comeback through the bracket, stay alive in this tournament. As, yeah, Davide is going to get to go first for the first time in this set, and that is a big advantage. And this hand is looking pretty solid. Has the Arceus Dialga Palkia, access to it rather, with the Quick Ball, has the Zacian V to start something out with the Intrepid Sword. Your best ability, right, starting it out. And it looks like Davide actually considering what to start here. Has that Zamazenta, so maybe, Chip, we're going to see that put in a little bit of work, right? We haven't really seen it utilized, right, in either of these matches here. So
yeah, I think just it's a solid starting option, right? It eliminates Mike's option to just get like an easy turn to hit into something, you know, if your draw is a little bit slower potentially, as we see Davide actually top decking another Zacian, so has plenty of options here. I think we'll probably just see the Arceus Dialga Palkia grabbed and probably just the Water Energy. You know, in this matchup that getting a Water Energy down is going to be safe. Of course, Davide has Mike's list, knows that Mike does not play anything like Crushing Hammer, has also played 2 games against him at this point. So you want to go ahead and get that Water Energy out of the deck, get it onto the Arceus Dialga and Palkia, so you can threaten that turn 2 Altered Creation, and you're also going to get to combine all of this turn with an Intrepid Sword.
yeah, this looks like the perfect turn 1 for this ADP deck, right? Has all of the keys necessary here pretty much to get this turn going. Even has the Water Energy too off the Energy Spinner, and this looks pretty solid here for Davide, right? It has all the pieces necessary to get things going, so we'll see exactly what happens. If there's anything else that can be done, I think considering whether or not to play the switch, interesting choice to go ahead and play that switch. That could just make it even easier for Mike to put together those pieces to maybe hit with Gale Thrust right away, or the following turn, right? Can even hit with that V to deal some solid damage and then set up some math. So interesting choice is actually only going to attach 1 Metal Energy off of there. Playing a little bit safer, wants to guarantee the attachment the following turn off of something like, just from the hand, wants to guarantee the Alter Creation for full effect on the following turn. So this is going to be a big turn here for Mike. He's got to put on some aggression, right? Has to get something set up, whether that's building up this V, getting a Jirachi in play, and Quick Ball is going to allow him to do that. It's going to grab a basic out of the deck. Actually going to go ahead and get rid of one of those Rapid Strike energies, so must have a pretty solid hand if that discard has to be one of those crucial cards. That being your Rapid Strike energy, puts in so much work and works great with this Urshifu VMAX.
Definitely one of the strongest cards in the deck, so I'm sure Mike is sitting on a very, very solid hand here. Might just have multiple energies in hand with like a Professor's Research, so has to just, you know, discard the hand anyway, so might as well just discard it. Yeah, and I think Davide, played that switch there, just kind of anticipating a potential Marnie from Mike. Mike is playing the full 4 copies of Marnie, so while you have that option to go ahead and switch into the Arceus Dialga Palkia, I think Davide wanted to just go ahead and do that. There is a potential downside, of course. You could get hit with a Strafe, you know, for a little bit of damage, not too much, but that damage does lead to a little bit easier time for Mike to find a knockout later in the game. Though, as long as Mike has not prized the Galarian Zigzagoon, it's something Mike should be able to achieve anyway.
Yeah, puts in a little bit of work, right, as long as that Galarian Zigzagoon is not prized. Chaotic Swell being very disruptive against that Martial Arts Dojo, which allows this Urshifu deck to hit for more damage, just 10 plus more, right, as a standard effect. But it actually is just going to be a Strafe for 30 into this Jirachi. So interesting choice for Mike to not utilize that Rapid Strike energy and to instead attach that basic fighting instead. So that would be something interesting to touch on as well, as it looks like Boss's Orders as the top deck for Davide has that Metal Energy that got saved off of the Intrepid Sword. So Davide could go for a play where Mike didn't do a lot last turn, right? Didn't play a supporter. Interestingly enough, didn't grab something like the Dene GX or a Crobat to draw more cards. Just pretty much assumed, right, with the cards in hand to put together something. So Mike, again, could be sitting on something like a lot of energy, right? Maybe the VMAX for next turn. Cards that he can't really afford to go ahead and discard, as we see. Davide, yeah, again, considering whether or not to play this Boss's Orders would be a solid play, right, is going to go ahead and play that. So it's going to disrupt Mike in the effect that he will not be able to utilize Stellar Wish, and is actually going to go ahead and energy switch this Metal Energy onto the active, and we're going to actually see an Ultimate Ray. Okay, so Davide taking a little bit of a different approach, wants to maybe just go straight for this play on building up the Zacian before utilizing Alter Creation. Again, Chip, what are your thoughts on this route? This is just such a different route. We haven't really seen Davide take this in games 1 or game 2.
Definitely a very interesting line, and I can't say I hate it, to be honest. You know, your opponent didn't have something like a switch in hand because they definitely would have gone ahead and utilized Stellar Wish there. That's probably a little bit more important than a potential, little bit of damage from Strafe. And, potentially limiting your opponent's options as far as getting off a Gale Thrust this turn by bringing up this Rapid Strike Urshifu before it becomes a VMAX. So, and it looks like Mike is actually going to be forced to play down the Crobat here. Something you do kind of want to avoid from time to time, but it actually works out okay for Mike since David did choose this line and did not go for the the Ultra Creation. And that is actually something that David can still do this coming turn and still be in a fine spot. So I actually do like this. Get the energy in play. You can go for the Ultra Creation and, still have that option.
Yeah, another thing to note is this Urshifu VMAX in the active is being threatened for a knockout from Brave Blade, right? Which would remove all the energy off the board if we don't see something like a G-Max Rapid Flow this turn. Mike may just accept that this Urshifu VMAX would get knocked out this turn by something like that Zacian V on the bench. It could just take the turn to utilize G-Max Rapid Flow. There's the Fighting Dojo, right? The Martial Arts Dojo going to come down into play. We'll boost the damage a little bit by 10 for those Pokemon that have fighting energy attached to it, like this Urshifu VMAX in the active. Mike's got to retreat, but we're actually going to see just that, right? What I talked about is going to utilize G-Max Rapid Flow, pretty much accept that there's a high possibility that this gets knocked out, right? That David maybe looks for something like the Brave Blade and tries to take a little bit of a different route of just taking 6 prizes regularly, like not utilizing Ultra Creation to boost the amount of prize cards, and instead trying to go through 2 VMAX Pokemon, as here is research, but finds no switching cards, which is definitely got to hurt if you're David. This may be a turn where David is now forced to utilize Ultra Creation, as you really do not want to have to manually retreat this Arceus Dialga Poké and lose 3 energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is still a totally fine spot for David to go ahead and use the Ultra Creation. You've got a lot of damage here on this Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, so now what you can do is just close out the game by knocking out the Rapid Strike VMAX and then knocking out any 1 prize Pokemon. Any Pokemon at all really will give you those last 2 prizes you would need, since you do get the bonus prizes now from the Altered Creation GX. Mike does find the energy attachment here, so we will see this Arceus Dialga Palkia being knocked out. But, I mean, honestly, with another VMAX coming into play, we have pretty decent potential here for Zamazenta V to put in work. Of course, Dauntless Shield, allowing it to be protected from Pokemon VMAX. And then it's also its attack, Assault Tackle, is very, very strong, letting you discard a special energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon, which could be a key factor here whenever Mike is already down a couple of Rapid Strike energies.
Yeah, so this is going to be interesting on David's side, right? So is not forced to play something down like that Cryogonal. That would spell trouble here, right? That would open up the ability for something like that G-Max Rapid Flow to take another 3 prize turn. But the question here, right? So David has the ability to utilize Boss's Orders.
That's a huge top deck.
And that is also very big. Has the Metal Saucer for the following turn. So we are going to see Boss's Orders bring up this Urshifu VMAX into the active, take a knockout, and there's the Eldegoss already in hand for David. So if Mike does not have a way to disrupt the hand, David's got game in hand. There's a Great Catcher as well. So if Mike is forced to maybe dig a little bit through the deck to find something like, maybe you have to utilize something like the Dene, this will be good. Even has a reset stamp on top of this out of the deck. So now that can be another grab, right, to set Mike back, as Mike will most likely be taking a 2 prize turn and knocking out this Zacian V on the board. He's going to go ahead and promote Jirachi to start things off. Going to utilize Stellar Wish to look at the top 5 cards, see if there's any trainer card there that Mike wants to grab, and then put that into the hand. I have to imagine, at the minimum, is looking for some sort of a pivoting out to get out of the active, and does find that that Scoop Up Net. So many switching options in this deck, right? You've got Escape Rope, you've got Switch, Scoop Up Net, tons of ways to pivot out of the active. So at minimum, has the ability to get the Jirachi out of the active. A Scoop Up Net, as Quick Ball will go ahead and discard a card from the hand, as Mike is going to be able to find any basic out of the deck. Could go through with something like Dedenne GX. We also know, I believe there is something along the lines of a Mewtwo in this list, which is great at recovering those supporter cards, right? So it looks like, actually, no, my mistake. There is no Mewtwo in Mike's list. A lot of these lists are playing stuff like the Mewtwo, right? Great with that My Report ability, but Mike taking a little bit of a different deck building strategy here, but does have that Marnie, like we talked about, needs to put on some hand disruption here, and Mike finding it, so that's a big step in the right direction, Chip.
Yeah, and finding that scoop up net was huge. That takes the Jirachi out of play, which is your lose condition on the next turn. Your opponent can just go energy plus boss, and that's GG's. Now, Mike, also finding the energy attachment off of the Marnie, that's pretty big, is going to be able to threaten a attack with just the regular Urshifu V. But honestly, David, not at all in a bad spot. Can just play this Marnie, just wants to find an energy. And if you can find an energy, which he unfortunately whiffs, would have been able to assault tackle and get rid of the rapid strike energy on your opponent's active. The thing is Mike is not putting on that much pressure. There's no more rapid strike energies left in the deck. So you actually cannot be damaged by an attack next turn besides Strafe, which is only going to do 30. So honestly, David, not in a terrible spot.
Yeah, that's one thing. Maybe Mike having to discard that Rapid Strike energy early. So we know at minimum is already down 3. So only has 1 more Rapid Strike energy left in the deck. And Zamazenta can just get rid of that, right, with something like that Assault Tackle. So this is going to be a big turn for Mike, right? So David obviously cannot bench any other Pokemon, as that will allow Mike to take that last prize card. So David is committing to this strategy of going in with this lone Zamazenta, as we see Jirachi is going to find a Pokemon Communication. So Mike is on the back foot, right? This deck usually using the VMAX Pokemon as the attackers, but can't do that against something like the Zamazenta. So we'll see what Mike can put together here. Chip is going to go ahead and promote this Urshifu V, and Pokemon Communications will go ahead and throw that Jirachi back into the deck that just got scoop up netted. So Mike is going to have to put something together here. Dedenne will be a great way for him to draw some cards and get through the deck. And there's a reset stamp, though, so that will put David at 2 cards in hand. And these are not 2 very good cards here. If Mike can find that last Rapid Strike energy in the deck, and David does not find anything out of here, Mike will be in an excellent spot, right? Putting on that pressure to set up for a 2-hit knockout. And this is where things get scary, but did not find the Rapid Strike energy, so that's just going to allow David to have an extra turn here to find the pieces necessary.
Yeah, I believe Mike's actually down all 4 Rapid Strike energies, so the only option for him is going to be to attach 2 more basic fighting energies to this Rapid Strike Urshifu V on the bench, and that doesn't even pick up the knockout. Even if you get there, it does not get you that knockout, so it's going to just be whittling away for a little bit with the Strafe, as we're going to get a look here. Yeah, 4 Rapid Strike energies down and 1 basic fighting, so only 3 energies left in the deck for Mike. Can he find one of those basic fightings to get that attachment? Karate Belt could have been useful, but unfortunately Mike at 1 prize, meaning that you're never going to be behind again, so not going to come into play at this point. And he does whiff the energy here.
Yeah, this is big. It's not at the end of the world, right? We'll need to strafe one more time to set up math. And there's a Dedenne off the top, but you can't play that down, right? That just gives your opponent an even easier win condition just to be able to use Boss's Orders, bring that Dedenne up, and take a knockout with Gale Thrust. So Mike has got to find an attachment this turn. If he can combine this with a strafe, that will put the Zamazenta in range to be knocked out by that V with 100 Fist Blows, I believe, is the attack on that. So we see the switch right away. Does Mike have the energy? It looks like not yet, as Quick Ball will go ahead into the deck. You have to imagine Mike still has 3 fighting energy left in the deck with only 1 prize card left. It's got to hurt to know that in those 11 cards left in the deck, there are 3 of the cards you're really looking for.
Yeah, I actually think David could have kind of safely played down this Dedenne GX. I mean, you know your opponent's out of VMAXs, and you know they didn't have an energy last turn, right? So if you put this down, you can dig for the energy to start attacking. It is a little bit scary, but you do have to start doing something at some point, right? If you just sit here with this Zamazenta, you will eventually lose the game to this play of Strafe into the 100 Furious Blows. Let's see if David can find an energy, and no, is unable to find one. Zamazenta can come down and Intrepid Sword for a turn, and actually we're just going to go ahead and see the Dedenne played. David, really feeling the pressure here, needs to dig for that energy attachment and doesn't even find it yet.
Does find the reset stamp, so this will put Mike back at a 1-card hand. We'll now need to find a lot of cards here at this point.
Yeah.
Also has the Rusted Sword, and we'll be able to also end the turn off with something like that Intrepid Sword. And there's the Mawile. We could see that try to grab a lucky card out of Mike's hand. It's definitely possible, right? I've seen it happen before, so
yeah, let's see
this is going to be a 1-card hand. It's Jirachi! Oh no, nothing in Mike's hand is going to be living off a top deck here, as research will be played. Do we see the energy there? We do, but there's not enough to to take a knockout, right, will not be able to Metal Saucer onto the active, has no way to pivot back into the active position. So I think considering going onto the Mawile, this is a smart play here. David can attack with that Mawile this turn.
Yeah.
Interesting choice to not Metal Saucer onto the Zamazenta and just attach the water energy for turn. Mawile does have a colorless in the attack cost, and that's really the only other place you could put this water energy. So maybe a little bit of an oversight by David, but also guaranteeing that Eldegoss for next turn means that Mike has got to top deck something here. It's down so many resources, only 9 cards left in deck. It's going to go into this Mawile, and it looks like the doors are just shutting on Mike here.
Mike has to top deck something here to stay in this game. Mawile will be able to pick up the 2-hit KO. Let's see if Mike is able to at least find a switch card. Even if he does, though, I just don't know exactly what pieces he could find to close out the game, and it looks like that is going to be it. Mike's going to pass it back over to David, and David able to take this knockout with Mawile GX's Wily Bite, dealing 190 damage, taking down the mighty Urshifu VMAX, and David will move on to the next round of winners finals here in the Global Finals.
Yeah, showing us that, hey, old can stand up with the new decks right coming into the format. Arceus and Palkia is still such a dominant deck in this format. Was on the back foot a little bit there, not drawing anything for multiple turns, but decided to go a little bit aggressive, play it Dene down, and it paid off. David able to go ahead and win game 3, and it's going to advance into the next round of the winner's bracket here. And I think we're ready, Chip, to go into our next match. We've got another winner.